Welcome in, everybody, to another live edition of 410 Sports Talk. I'm James Haskell, along with my faithful compadre, Glenn Martin. We are so excited as the draft creeps closer to talk more and more about the Baltimore Ravens draft needs, draft plans, draft strategy. But special guest tonight that we want to give a shout-out to, the well-known, the infamous Bobby Trosset. Bobby, welcome to the show, my man. How you doing?
Appreciate you guys for having me, man. Absolutely. You know, I'm out on the porch here at the ladies' place in Baltimore County. I'm looking at the sunset. I got a cocktail off to my right. And hey, you guys have set the standard here for a while in this space, and I've talked to you both about that a little bit, and certainly, James, you and I have talked a little bit more about just the specifics and picking your brain, man. So I appreciate you being so welcoming, and thanks for the invite.
Yeah, man. Welcome to the family, to Ravens Flock YouTube, right? And make sure you guys, we'll put it in the description. Make sure you guys go check out Bobby's channel. If you don't know who Bobby is, you probably haven't listened to radio in the Baltimore area. You maybe not from here, but Bobby is well connected and has an awesome channel. So make sure to go check it out. All things Ravens, and I think you're going to be expanding to other aries. Orioles.
Oh, he's already pissed off his fair share of Orioles fans over the last couple of days.
Glenn and I were chatting about this a little bit before we came on.
You talking about Uncle Bobby?
No.
What do you mean?
Not Uncle Bobby. He's talking about my brother. We call him Drunkle Bobby.
I didn't want to say Drunkle Bobby.
No. Bobby's got the Orioles fans up in arms, but he's making a lot of sense.
That's hilarious. Yeah, no. I mean, just with opening day obviously being yesterday, we're taping this on today's the 12th, and then on the 11th, I don't know. I just thought I'd put some thoughts down, kind of go off the cuff a little bit about what I feel is the reality of opening day, and at least it has been in Baltimore the last few years, right? To me, the magic wears off after opening day because the product, and I did just see Cedric Mullins left the yard for his first ever grand slam before we came on, minutes before this. So hey, I hope I'm wrong, right? But to me, since Mike Elias took over these last 3 or 4 years after, and I'm not saying certainly the point, not to go crazy Orioles on you right now, but the point of the video that I released yesterday that has caused a little bit of chaos, I think my words have been misconstrued, to be honest with you, was to talk a little bit of, yeah, exactly. But the magic typically wears off because the product after opening weekend, especially in last year's case, has started to be lackluster. So I hope that things start to turn around. Obviously, they've put more of an emphasis and investment in minor league development versus the major league product. So we'll see if it pays off.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with these O's. And certainly Glenn will have his eyes on it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, baseball puts me to sleep. So, yeah, that's neither here nor there. All right, so let's get into the Ravens, Glenn. Call him up.
See what you did, Glenn? Glenn, you see what you did there? You got us going on the Orioles.
Jeez, the whiz.
Hey, I'm just glad you had that follow-up video today. At least give some hope and some light at the end of the tunnel, talking the farm system. So I appreciate.
See what I did with the title, little theme there. The truth of.
I see that. It was good. But all right, but we're here, of course, to talk Ravens football, and so I guess where I want to start is when talking about the needs of this coming draft. I don't remember if there was a year where it could be really. I mean, I think you could make an argument for a handful of different positions they could attack in the first round of this draft. When in years past, I think most people came to a consensus of 1 or 2 positions they would target. So when you sit back and look at the areas of need, I want to first start on the offensive line. How do you, with Ronnie Stanley's uncertainty at the left tackle position, I'm so torn because if he's back, then I look at the group right now and I think it might be a plus group. But without him and the uncertainty surrounding him, then you're in big trouble. So what is your thoughts on the overall offensive line and how big of a need that is to address?
Yeah, Glenn, my biggest takeaway from the pre-draft press conference within the last couple weeks or so was the uncertainty about what is the contingency plan in place should Ronnie not be able to go like what happened last year, obviously, and that was devastating for him. We can all obviously agree on that. I think that the right-hand side is certainly shored up. I think they certainly expect that Morgan Moses is going to step in and be that starting right tackle come week 1. They expect Kevin Zeitler to do exactly what he did last year at right guard, which was be a wall, be a stabilizer. I mean, I think he was one of the more under the radar stories on that offensive, really not on the entire offense. He provided some stability there. I'm in the camp that they're going to go to McCary for starting center duties. I think they're going to pass on Linderbaum. I don't see them taking a center 14 overall. We can get into that a little bit later on. On the left-hand side, obviously, you have to make a decision for who they might use at left guard. Will that be Tyree Phillips? Will that be Ben Cleveland? Obviously, they would expect it to be. They would hope, based on the draft capital that they used on him last year, that he'd be a starting caliber left guard. But I thought he showed some signs of growth and also some stuff to be desired last year. And I think if Ben Powers is still on this team, on this 53-man roster come September, that he deserves a shot at that as well. And then we get to the left side, the big caboose, right? Ronnie, when you're – I think some folks forget in the fan base that – and maybe this is just some of the you hear the police in the background. They might be looking for me with this cocktail on my right. But, to me, fans have to remember that he is doing everything he possibly can from a rehab standpoint. At the end of the day, these tackles are 6'6", 6'7", 6'4", 6'5" types of guys who are 300-plus pounds. It's out of their control sometimes from a rehab standpoint. So while you can hope and you can expect and you can pray that he's ready to go, they have to have a contingency plan in place. And I don't know about you guys, while I have respect for what Jawan James has been throughout his career, if he's the answer, if he is the contingency plan, I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you there. We don't even really know how flexible he is or versatile he is from a position standpoint, right? Like asking a guy that hasn't played football in 2 years to then turn around and play left, or even hop Morgan over to left. Either way, it's a compromise scenario for the Ravens if Ronnie isn't back. So with that being said, where does the offensive line fall for you in the priorities as far as ranking the priorities in the draft, right? Like, because you also got to think about edge, at least in my mind. Eric DeCosta talked about corner, and there's even some people, myself included, now starting to look at the middle linebacker position, all based on and then interior defensive line. There's so many things that Ravens need to look to shore up. So where does the offensive line fall for you as far as priorities go?
Well, I'm just going to come out and say it. I've had this nagging sense, this urge from within. I don't know what it is, but I think they're going to go corner at 14. And I don't know who it's going to be. I don't expect Sauce to be available. He's too swaggy to be there available at 14, calling himself the best player in the draft and all of this. I mean, he's really going to be the guy to watch, you might argue, aside from some of the big guns that are expected to go within the first few picks, like I guess Thibodeau's rumored to be dropping and maybe even be available at 14, but the Hutchinsons and that crew. Look, man, Derek Stingley Jr. is a name that jumps out. Andrew Booth from Clemson certainly is. I'm going to be talking to one of the recruiting directors from Clemson's football team before the draft to get a little sense of what this kid's all about. And I believe he had a top 30 visit with Baltimore, or at least that was the rumor within the last 48 hours, I think, or so when we're live here. So I get the sense it's going to be corner, but that doesn't mean that I think corners, to get back to your question, I don't think corners at the top of the list. I think it goes edge, tackle, middle linebacker, and I guess corner comes in there at 4. But you could argue corner's 3. I mean, let's be honest. The departures of Anthony Averett and Chris Westry are I think that's significant.
Tavon Young included, yeah.
And you got to put Tavon in that as well. Averett got dragged last year because of the drop-off that anybody who tried to fill in for Humphrey and Peters, it was going to look different. It was bound to look different. And he got dragged within the fan base because of it, when really the numbers tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think depth, it's more of a depth need at corner. But if one of those top guys are there, I mean, I would not be I would not be disappointed to see the Ravens go grab him.
Because really quickly, Glenn, something that a lot of people aren't talking about right now, the Ravens haven't come to any sort of an extension with Marcus Peters as of yet, unless I'm missing something. You know what I mean? So even if we get a top tier guy and you shelf him like for a year, even though you won't really be shelving him because of the way, you move him in slot, Tavon's gone, whatever. Or you said this in the offseason, early in the offseason, Glenn, maybe they get an outside guy and they really they like Marlon inside and they start using him more inside because he's played really well in there. So yeah, I don't think it would be a wasted pick, but I think DeMarcus Peters, the lack of extension there is something to keep an eye on as well when it comes to what we do at the draft.
No doubt. And they could find a cheaper option there. But Bobby, let me ask you about the interior of the defensive line, because this is a position where I think the Ravens have a shot at getting their pick at the lot. I think there could be very well a rush at pass rusher. I think that the cornerbacks, and at least the number 1 and 2, have a good shot at being gone at 14. But that would mean they have their choice at the interior defensive line. So they could grab either one of those guys from Georgia, which is crazy that they were playing next to each other. And then Walker was on the outside, and they could have had Jermaine Johnson too if he didn't transfer. What about, even though they did just re-sign Calais Campbell and they brought Michael Pierce back home, what about if they go with, Davis out of Georgia or Wyatt? I mean, would that be a reach, or would that be a wasted first-round pick in your opinion?
Based on the conversations that I've had and the observations that I've made, just I'm sure as you guys have as well from both the end of season press conference and the pre-draft conference, is that they feel this is a deep draft at that point. And I feel like they feel like they can hit a home run in the 3rd and 4th round. I just get that sense. And so that's kind of why I said what I said at the top about corner. But to get back to the news from over the weekend as it relates to this, while Calais is a feel-good signing, it is in all likelihood meaning that he'll finish a Hall of Fame career in Baltimore in a couple of years. And, of course, he'll be one day in Canton. And he's a hell of a leader, and his character obviously is paramount for this organization and for this team. It's not a long-term fix. It's a short-term fix.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like that Band-Aid that we've been talking about defensively speaking at a number of different areas of the defense over the course of these last few seasons. And, while he and Derek are called the Twin Towers, right? When they're at their full capacity, when they're at their full length, Derek Wolfe I'm talking about. But who's to say that Derek's going to be on this 53-man? I mean, he's dealing with some significant back and hip injuries. He had a procedure this offseason. And to think that he'll be back, especially based on some of the comments that Jonas Schaefer was on top of from the Baltimore Sun earlier this offseason about the fact that he may have been mulling retirement at one point, and then he came back and refuted it hard. That shows you that he's at least discussing it. He's at least considering it. So my moral of the story here in this long-winded answer is that it has been relatively underwhelming in terms of free agency on the defensive line. I love Michael Pierce. He's a Raven. He's back. Wasn't all that long ago that he showed up to camp, though, after a little Italy hoorah in Europe, and his weight wasn't really allowing him to pass that brutal strength and conditioning test before the Ravens season. So I hate to continue to bring that up because he's a good dude, and hopefully that was just an outlier. But it begs the question: where are things right now when it comes to his discipline, his physicality, and the Holy Trinity? What is that?
That's God, Jesus, and the Holy Ghost, baby.
Appreciate
the
it, Cakes.
three of us. I mean, what's up, Cakes? You got me like, you see me trail off there. I'm reading it. I'm like, what the frick? Man.
Cakes is always good for
comment.
some good
for a
comments.
Second, I thought that was Jim Palmer. I'm like, isn't there an Orioles game on right now? I need in the booth.
That's awesome. But I agree with you in that it is a short-term need, and so, or it's a short-term play. Even with Michael Pierce, right? Like I think he's what, 29? Am I mistaken here?
Yeah, he's very young, and he took pretty much didn't he take off the COVID year? And
then he only played half the year last year with an injury. So there's still tread on the tires. But like you said, Bobby, there's always questions with Mike because I've never seen someone built quite like a fire hydrant as much as Michael Pierce. Right? Like, love the guy to death.
Right.
But
And speaking of nose tackle duties, I don't see Brandon Williams being back in the fold
yeah,
this
no.
upcoming fall. I mean, let's not forget the Instagram post that he put up. I believe it was like within the first maybe like the first week or so of off season. He made it very clear he's not coming back. I'll be shocked if he's in the fold.
Yeah, he'll end up in New England, something like that. Right? That's just kind of how it
or
goes.
the Jets.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or
there
he'll
you
get a
go.
payday from the Jets. But yeah,
Yep.
that's going to be interesting as well. And we had a guy on Draftplex. He's a draft expert, and he pretty much explained to us that his inclination is that the Ravens, like Glenn mentioned, the highest likelihood they have to get their guy at a specific position is going to be defensive line, because a run will be had at some of the other positions before, they get the pick of the litter.
Okay.
But so it'll be interesting. But let me throw this one at you, because this is something I've been thinking about a lot. So Bobby, Glenn, and DK get tired of me talking about this.
Here we go.
See, they get tired of me talking about this. But I went to the great University of Utah in the Pac-12, and they happen to have
I know
a middle
where he's
linebacker.
going, Glenn. I know where he's going.
They happen to have a middle linebacker who's one hell of a football player. And, we've had some success with Utah players, obviously Eric Weddle and now Marcus Williams. And, I'm sure there's a few that
Tyler
I'm forgetting.
Huntley.
Tyler Huntley is just another one.
Yeah.
But really what it comes down to is the fact that we have a guy in the middle in Patrick Queen. Do you think that the Ravens, if Devin Lloyd is sitting there at 14, do you think they would seriously consider and potentially pull the trigger on bringing in a guy like that?
You're making me think about the whole last week's news cycle with Bobby Wagner. And I think, speaking of things getting misconstrued, right? I had Lacey DaCosta on the show earlier this week, and we talked a little bit about how Eric was getting dragged. And, when I say that, Twitter dragged. So like the percentage of people that are actually dragging him is probably like 3 people who live in their basement. But you know what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah.
And so they were drilling him about how it wasn't a sweet enough deal to lure basically Bobby Wagner, a former All-Pro in Seattle, to Baltimore, when really he came out and talked on. And I know I'm getting off on a tangent here, so reel me back in if I have to here. But he went on the McAfee show a couple days after that and said, no, it was not about the money. Baltimore made a heck of a push. Matter of fact, it made me think hard and long about the decision. But really, he's a West Coast guy. He had his family there. So I found it very suspect that so many folks were dragging EDC because he put together a nice package for him. With all that said, I think you have to look at bolster. If you have an opportunity to bolster that middle portion of the field, it has been too inconsistent. Your former first-round pick from 2020 needs the presence of Josh Bynes in order to be the guy. That's a problem. We heard all year long, guys, that he was a calming presence, right? That's the word that you heard about Josh. He's the phrase you heard, a calming presence for Queen. Well, great. But Josh is not going to be around forever. Now, he just got re-signed. Another feel-good story there. Made that final tackle in the 2012-2013 Super Bowl. But again, that's not going to get it done. To me, that's another Band-Aid, and they need to bring in a big-time player if they can.
Well, I'm starting to feel some headwinds.
Yeah, of course you are. I mean, every year he picks a Ute, and I got to hear about him the entire
and then look, what I say about Tyler Huntley, though.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it that of all the players, there's Tyler Huntley right in Baltimore. And of course, Jimmy didn't miss that autograph signing neither.
Nope.
Made sure he was there. No doubt about it. But last one from me, Bobby, and it's about whether they stand pat or if they do make a trade. Now, I guess the most likely thing is that they stand pat. But I want to ask you this. Is it more likely that they target someone and trade up to go get their guy, or that they see that there's plenty of guys, maybe 3 guys that they like, and they're willing to trade back? What do you think is the more likely scenario?
Oh, absolutely the latter. I'll be shocked if they go up. Won't you?
Yeah, but I was hoping you would say something
Listen, I mean, I can be the hot take guy here and there, but I also don't want to be getting dragged by your listenership, your audience in a couple weeks when they stand pat,
Right.
It's like, but no, I would have to think, if anything, man, maybe they'll trade out of the first round. Who knows? We know EDC loves his picks. We know he's a little bit more aggressive than Ozzie. He talked about that in that recent GM podcast. You see that little snippet that was going around the internet? I found that really interesting to see how candid he was in that interview. You should go, for those of you out there listening who haven't seen it, just go search Eric DeCosta on Twitter. It should still certainly be probably, kind of rotating around the internet right now. But, yeah, I would definitely say the latter, Glenn. And what, they got 10 picks overall. So if there's any way they can add to that, they're going to do it.
Oh, man. It's going to be a fun time here in a couple weeks, and there will be a lot of people upset and a lot of people just, excited. Certainly I was upset at the Odafe Owe pick, and that turned out to be what I consider to be a solid pick. Glenn and I
jury's still out though, right? Jury's still out on that one.
But imagine if we didn't have him right now, how desperate we'd be at edge. I mean,
that's true. But what about if Zeus ends up being, for the next decade,
look,
Pro Bowl left
don't
tackle?
bring that big baby up. Look, now that's a button to push. That big whining baby complained himself out of Baltimore and killed his drafts or his trade stock on his way out. Look, I had to wear this disgusting filth of a jersey on this show because I lost a bet. And I still, you know what? It's not even worth my fire pit because that goofball, that's just not you don't do it. You don't go to Twitter and you whine your way out of Baltimore. Oh my goodness.
James, it feels like to me, like Glenn's like a high school classmate of this guy, being that he's from Baltimore, he's homegrown. This is personal. This sounds personal to me, man.
Yeah. Glenn did not like the way that he left. And certainly the fact that he left this pretty high and dry with the timing of Ronnie, that didn't help either. And Glenn can be salty. And kind
of like that though. You got some fire in you, Glenn.
Oh yeah.
It's like J-Dub says in the comments. It's just don't mention Orlando Brown Jr. around me, or I'm gonna go off the deep end because that guy. I'm a Raven. He was running around on the practice field, as a youngster, and then he burns the Ravens on his way out because he wants to play left.
But you know what? And now I'm gonna give you what you're looking for. I'm going to hit you with the counterpoint. On the contrary.
All right.
And I'm going to go the sentimental value here too, because the man who's no longer with us, Zeus Sr., had one wish for his son, and that was to be a starting caliber left tackle in the league and be paid like it. And because that wasn't happening in Baltimore, that to me was the be-all, end-all. And I think it was a spiritual thing. I think it was a personal thing. I hope he ends up finishing his career here. Then there's issues because then something happened with Ronnie if he has to. But that to me is what this was about.
So I think Glenn and I both agree with you to a certain extent as far as the payment portion of it, which I think had a lot more stake in the conversation than what people were giving it. However, I think Glenn and I both agree, and I'm curious to know whether you agree with this. Really, what it comes down to is the way he left. It was he could have done all that privately, where he didn't have to go to Twitter, and bring things up, because then, like Glenn said, what he did was he lowered his stock to an extent that it made it more difficult. Now, EDC got a haul. He got a decent deal for him, but at the end of the day, that deal would have been sweeter if he would have just stayed a little quiet and not let people know he was so disgruntled or whatever, like really wanting to leave. I think that's what it really came down to. It wasn't what he did, but how he did it.
Can't disagree with you on that.
So that was a tough one. But Bobby, last question for you, at least for me. Any dark horse moves the Ravens make in this offseason?
Jimmy tried to tell me they were taking Malik Willis.
No.
He tried.
No, hold on. Look, you see what Glenn's doing? He's putting words in my mouth, Bobby. You gotta hear me out. All I said was that Joe Ortiz didn't have to bring up Malik in the press conference. He didn't have to talk extensively about Malik in the press conference. But I think that as a team, you have an obligation to turn over every rock and every leaf.
Oh, here we go.
Especially if your quarterback is only under contract for one more year. He hasn't signed a long-term extension, and the Ravens are doing everything they can to get Lamar to sign the dotted line, because every day they don't, that price tag goes up and up and up. So my point is that it changes the conversation, the fact that he doesn't have a long-term deal, as far as their strategy moving forward from a quarterback perspective. It has to. There's no way at least the conversations aren't different. That's all I said. See, Glenn's over here putting words in my mouth.
Well, they have to bring in a third. To your point, they have to bring in a third, obviously. Are they going to do it with draft stock? Or are they going to do it with potential guys that are just hanging around waiting for their numbers to be called? I would have to think it'd be the latter. I mean, really? You're going to use stock draft capital on a quarterback?
Right.
I mean, they know something that we don't. If that's the case, I saw. By the way, I don't really know the answer to the whole dark horse thing, so I'm just going to talk about what Ray Lewis said today.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that today was the second time in under a calendar month that he has gone on national television and spoken on Lamar's situation. And that, to me, even though the organization is saying what it's supposed to say about kind of putting it in Lamar's court, right? That's what they've done recently, saying that he's the one that's holding it up. Ray coming out twice now in under calendar month saying he prays for him often, which is not an unusual thing for Ray to do. We all know he's a religious guy. But he's mentioned a couple times, he's alluded to that he would like to see if Lamar perhaps is overlooking the folks around him that could be helping him, that he could be utilizing throughout this process that he's not. I found that very interesting. And to me, if I'm going to say one dark horse thing, it's that he ends up playing this entire upcoming season on the 5th-year option without a long-term deal, and they franchise tag him for the 6th.
I'll be a salty.
Yep.
I'm gonna be a baby about. You thought I was a baby about Orlando. I'm gonna be a real baby when if I see Lamar in a different jersey.
I'll leave you with that.
Yes,
that's what I think. I think that's going to be the case because you know what? He is so unique, so unusual. And Harbaugh talks about it. His teammates talk about it. The front office talks about it. And to me, he's going to bet on himself. He came from a very little, as we all know, in South Florida. And I think he understands the magnitude of what he's doing. He knows that he tried to bet on himself last year, came back to bite him. I think he's going to come in with vengeance this upcoming season. A lot of that is going to have to do with the rehabs of a lot of the important pieces around him. But I'm telling you, man, he is different. This dude is different. He's willing to bet on himself for a second consecutive season. You watch.
Well, I hope that he wins that bet kind of like Joe Flacco did and does it in Super Bowl fashion. But, Bobby, thanks so much for coming on with us and appreciate your time.
Make sure you guys check out his stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guys, really, really appreciate you, and I can't wait till you're down my way in Fells. I'm out in the county, like I said, right now, but looking forward to getting in person with you and then also returning the favor on my side as well.
Absolutely, man.
Thanks so much, Bobby. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely. See you guys.
All right.
See ya.
Don't get nervous because I'm here now.